Good day and welcome to the Strong Ambition Podcast. I am your host, Rylan Qualley. I am here to dive into what makes ambitious people live the way they do and succeed the way they do, and especially in the realms of mindset, training, or exercise, because that's my job. That's what I do. And normally I actually like to interview people and to really dive into that, but now I want to help individuals. I want to really help people who have been asking some questions on my social media. Now, it took me a while to get this out there, but I wanted to make this both tangible for the IGTV and also a nice little soundbite for those who are listeners of the podcast. So there's going to be some visual aids, but there's also going to be pretty good description on what we're going to talk about here. This is called the Quality Q&A because I want to give quality answers, and I dove into some of the research of this just so I wasn't just pulling all these concepts out my ass, but actually trying to dive into what some of the controversial conversations are around some of these things. So, it was helpful for me because I like doing research too occasionally. Now, I'm not going to act like I did so much research like I was handing in a paper for university, but I did go through some meta-analysis and I got some pretty tangible things. And, always take information for what it is. You have empirical, which is the research. You have what's worked for you and what you've seen work. And that's how I reflect it. And that's how I'm going to give this opinion. So you can take it or leave it. It's up to you, but I'm here to help. So let's dive into the very first question here. Oh, I'll also show you quick here, just because I do want to show this. For those who can see this, I have papers. Like if anyone wants to see these papers, I can actually send them to you and you can dive into them a little bit more, just so again, you know that I'm coming from some point of the literature and not just pulling this shit out my ass. But let's dive into it. I love this first question. Okay, so we have, how much protein would it require for me to retain strength and to shrink my power belly? Now I know this individual is more of a power lifter, so he's trying to kind of lean up, but he wants to maintain strength. So protein is important. 1 gram per pound of body weight is a great system, and I've always known that. And I looked up the literature. Literature supports it anywhere from 1.6 to 2.3 grams per kilogram. And quick math here for you, 2.2 pounds is a kilogram. So you can see how the upper echelon there, the upper region is 2.3, which is, like I say, it's about a pound per gram per body weight. Now, the one thing here is it also goes down to 1.6. Now, this is what you can consider. If you are a leaner person, you should be the higher end. If you are a overweight person, you might want to be closer to the 1.6. You can also use your lean mass, and there's some ratios you can check online. Look for the waist neck height ratio, and if you do that, you can figure out roughly where your lean mass is. But also note here that one of the papers actually stated that 1.6 to 2.4, less fatigue with higher protein. So if you're going to go into calorie deficit and you're trying to maintain your strength, we got to maintain it for our muscles. So continue to feed them, because you don't want your body to feast on your muscle tissue, because it will. And so we're trying to be in a calorie deficit to reduce size, but we're going to want to make sure that we don't touch that muscle tissue. So I always encourage more than enough protein. And just so you cannot be afraid of it for your health, no evidence that it's detrimental to the kidneys. And that was in the paper. I'm not just pulling that on my ass. Like, that is from the paper, that there's no literature that actually supports that. Too much carbs can do that, right? Kidney failure, stuff can happen. But making sure that you have that protein, at least your body weight, and some studies even say 3.1, and I'm kind of that style. I like to do that for my cuts. So not for everyone, not everyone likes to eat that much protein, but start with your lean body mass if you're not already eating there, and then kind of work your way up, and it'll make a difference. You'll feel very well satiated, and it'll help retain that. Best advice for six-pack abs, same as above. Start with that protein. So if you're going to want abs, you want musculature. So, to even build that, you're going to want protein for it. And it's also, like I say, it's more satiating. So if you're going to try to reduce calories, like assuming you're trying to lean up here, and then strength training to get those abs, right? So when I have a barbell on my back, or I'm doing deadlifts or something like that, or even good core training, don't just think of just doing sit-ups. Like those look at the abs that you see on a football player. Like, those guys are jacked, and they're these thick abs, hypertrophied abs, because they put barbells on their backs, right? So I'm not saying you have to lift barbells, but that tells you what that core training does. And strength training, I think, should be 3 to 4 times a week, closer to 4, hit high intensity interval training should be closer to about 1 to 2 times a week. You can put it at the end of the strength training, or you can have it as its own day. But I wouldn't recommend going more than 5 intense days. So those each should be their own kind of like, if you go 5 intense days a week, I think that's more than enough because you don't want to overwhelm yourself. You can also add some aerobic lifestyle. So I don't say traditional cardio unless you're bodybuilding. And even then, I am right now trying to prep for a bodybuilding cut, but I'm going to try to do more lifestyle. I try to go for walks outside. I try to go for walks with loved ones. I try to make it nice and simple so it's a part of my life. Walk to work, park farther away from work. Just add 5 minutes there, 5 minutes there. Like, we just sit too much. And that's the main problem. It's not that you have to do cardio, but you should have a minimum effective dose so that you're at least an active person. Finding a manageable calorie deficit when you have good quality food. So that means not really processed food. You're having, basically, if you can kill it, pluck it, or pick it, those are the best things, right? The closer to the source, the better you're going to have for bioavailability and satiation, right? So I'm going to feel more full. Like, I feel more full when I eat an apple compared to, when I drink a soda, right? So I would rather have that low glycemic kind of food. If I'm going to have a carb, I'd rather have good protein and fat coming from an animal-based source, because I feel more full and I can be in a calorie deficit like I am right now, and I function very well with it. So that's the best advice. That hits all realms, right? And that's as simple as it can be, without getting into the details of what an individual would need to do with their lifestyle. So that's the rough. It's not just the diet, it's not just the training, it's everything that mixes in so you have just the right effective dose. So let's talk about the calories, because I did have a question here about how do you know if you're too low and need to increase to burn fat. So just to start off, as long as you're hitting your protein intake, like I just said before, you should be trying to burn fat. Now, to be too low, you got to listen to your performance, but there's a few different equations you can look at here. Harris-Benedict equation, you can look online, and I have the chart here for those who can see. And I didn't really love the number. It wasn't like, it doesn't know my lifestyle. It says my basal metabolic rate was around 2,200, and that my estimated total calorie maintenance is around 3,400. And I think that's a little high for me. And this is, like I say, because you got to kind of experience with these things. Does it make sense for you based on when you're gaining, losing, or maintaining? You got to give it some time. Don't just give it a week, give it weeks. And people should really be trying to start at a maintenance and know what your maintenance is. And if you're not losing and you're not gaining, then you know what your calorie requirement is, right? Have the right amount of protein, have high quality sources of food. And this is like a phase that everyone forgets to do, is just have the right amount of everything first. Then you find out how much should you reduce. Don't just start reducing. Like, am I getting the right amount of protein, nutrients? Am I getting good quality protein or carbs or fats? Am I getting enough micronutrients? And once you I feel good and the scale's not doing anything, like, measure yourself. So the other one here I'll say too is you could just use your body weight and times whatever. So if you're in a surplus, it should be your body weight times 1.7. It could be a maintenance to surplus depending on your genetics and your body type. So that could be your body weight times 15. Could be a maintenance if you're an active person. It could be a surplus if you're not a very active person. It could be a maintenance to a deficit, your body weight times 12. So the kind of every, you see low deficit would be like times 10, maintenance would be times 12. Maintenance could also be 15. Again, depends on your output and your kind of basically who you are. And the surplus, it will probably be your body weight times 17. But again, if you're an overweight person, your body weight isn't always going to be a great indication. I use lean mass numbers. So basically, without getting into the details too much here with what I do with my clients, is I can use basically the percentage here of where my body maintenance would be. So I figure out how many calories I would have from protein. And if it was 30% of my calories, so my body weight at 220, if that was 30% of my calories, that'd be close to 3,000 calories. And that actually makes sense. So to me, if we can make our deficit or calorie equation relative to my lean body mass or my body, like that kind of range, it works really well. So that's for me, and that's getting into the nuances of being able to do your body composition assessment. So, I mean, I have some notes here. If you want more of a follow up, just reach out. But I don't want to get into the details of this because it's kind of, mathematical, and it's you got to kind of see the equation. But I would say the main thing is to listen to your performance. Okay, if you think it's too low, track your weight. Like if you want to know, you got to track your weight or track something. Track your waist even if you need to for a long period of time. Find out what you eat. Like you're gonna need to figure out the calories that you're consuming, right? And it's not that you have to live by the calculator, but you should determine where you're at. Do it for a while, and when you look at maybe it's your waist or your weight on a scale, and a scale can actually help you for this if you can be objective of it. If you're obsessive over your scale, then it might not work for you. But stepping on that scale every day, and don't take every number so literal. Look at the trend. You might be up one day, you might be down the other day. Well, what's the trend over 7 to 14 days? And if you're eating consistently for 7 to 14 days and nothing happens, hey, we're out of maintenance. If you're trending downwards, hey, we're at a deficit. If you're trending upwards, oh, you might be having too much. But you're going to need 7 to honestly, even upwards of 14 days, and you're going to need consistent eating. So just to even come back to the question though of too low, you're going to need to know where your maintenance is first to know where you just should be first off. Don't dive into a deficit if you don't know maintenance. That's the problem with so many equations. Everyone goes yo-yo because we either don't give a fuck and we just go way too high, or we care way too much and we go too low. So start with what's the right amount. Let's take 20%, 30% off that, and then go from there. And then from there, we can't put you into a metabolic ward and figure it out. So you're going to have to figure it out by tracking a little bit, just a little bit, and listen to that performance. What is the best way to gain weight if you've always been small or have a fast metabolism? So I'm going to hit this first word, fast metabolism, right on the head and say, I don't think there's fast metabolisms and slow metabolisms. I don't like that terminology. There are different metabolisms, absolutely. So the reason they say fast metabolism or slow metabolism is because, the person doesn't put on weight. So their body must be burning a lot of calories, right? Well, here's a good story. My brother is taller than me, lankier, and he's more of an endurance athlete. And they would say, oh, he has a fast metabolism. I have a slow metabolism. I put on weight. But why the hell am I the one that's eating thousands of calories more, right? I'm in a deficit. And if my brother ate my calories now, he'd probably put on weight. So it's not that his is faster. It's the fact that he doesn't want to consume food like I do, in my view. So whenever you talk to individuals that have this small, fast metabolism, find out what they're eating. And then people will say, oh yeah, they just eat so much. They eat so much. People really don't realize what they eat and they don't eat. And there ends up being a balance. There ends up being a balance if you're not putting on weight. There's yet to be studies proven of, oh, these are, genetic freaks where they just cannot put on weight or anything. I haven't seen any study or heard of them. And I'm yet to hear anyone disprove calories in, calories out. So on that basis, what I assume is that it's your muscle fiber type that is probably your genetics. And it is a genetic thing. There is an individual kind of difference here that my brother has this slow twitch, lankier, longer endurance. He does endurance marathons. He's getting ready for Ironman kind of stuff. Me, I'm bulky, I'm big. I like to lift, explosive stuff. So the thing is, with a slow twitch, it's going to have more metabolic process towards an aerobic capacity. So even when he overconsumes calories, he might put on fat, but he also can run off of aerobic and be more basically satisfied, not feel the need to eat food so much. And for myself, I would not only want to eat the food, right? But then I would actually store the fat without having the metabolic processes to actually burn the fat effectively. So I remember seeing a little thing at school, and they were talking about these experiments with mice, and mice that had more slow twitch were more metabolically healthy because their body just runs off of fat more. This day and age, we run off of fat more, right? So when I changed my diet to eat more predominantly fat, that actually helped me a lot to control this metabolism action. But to come back to your question, because I don't want to go too much of a tangent, as I already did on metabolism. Metabolism itself is always going to be calories in, calories out. If you want to gain weight, you got to eat more. Your satiation happens quicker than mine, right? So if I want to put on weight, I just let myself do what I do. And then for my brother to gain weight, he's got to force it a little bit. But if my brother wanted to go for a run, he can just do what he does. If I got to go for a run, actually, I did my repeated my half last year with him. It was a morning jog for him. He was like upright and chilling. Every time he looked back at me, I'm just dying. He has the process for it, right? So let's say you're like my brother and you want to put on some weight. Well, then you got to eat protein. You got to be in an energy surplus, and you're going to want to resistance train. So just so you know, for the also for maximal anabolism, this came from the research, and I don't want to like get into nuanced details of what they say here, but for those who can see it, you can see what this quote actually says is that you would want to have a minimum of 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram per day, but you should be at the upper limit of 2.2, spread out over 4 meals is a necessity. And so you're going to want to, let's say you weigh 160 pounds, you're going to want 40 grams of protein per meal. Okay. Take your body weight in protein, divide that, how many meals you're going to eat a day, ideally 4 if you're trying to gain size, be in an energy surplus. And, I even got a guy that I'm telling to eat ice cream. I would not tell a lot of people to, but he's trying to gain size. He doesn't have much of an appetite. So this is, a lot of people talk about this. When you're a smaller body type, you got to use things that are going to stimulate appetite. And so on top of that, don't just eat garbage and eat a bunch of food without putting in the work, because you're going to need to change your muscle fiber to get bigger. So again, the difference between me and my brother is muscle fiber type. So what I do well is I lift. And then for resistance training, you got these different rep ranges like 6 to 8, 8 to 12, 12 to 15, 15 to 20. They all have their own capacity for how they can promote hypertrophy. And 8 to 12 is a traditional zone, but don't get caught up in one zone. My old boss, AJ, gave me the best, simplest advice. Hypertrophy is lifting the heaviest weight as many times as much as possible. But what he's even saying there is you're going to want your 12 to 15 to be strong. You're going to want your 15 to 20 to be strong. If you can only do 10s for curls 12 to 15 times, let's make those 25s. Let's make those 30s. Let's make those 35s. Then you're going to be a big human, right? Like power lifters are big people, right? Now they don't stay in the hypertrophy zone. They stay at the lower rep range. But the reason why bodybuilders, they're not that weak. They're not as strong necessarily as power lifters because they spend more time in hypertrophy zones. But my recommendation is you start high, work low, and repeat that cycle again and again. So do a cycle where you focus on 15 to 20 reps on most of your lifts, and then you go into 12 to 15 the next week, and then you go into 8 to 12 the next week, and then 6 to 8, and then come back to similar exercises. Repeat that all knowing that you're going to be stronger. The next time you do that cycle, 15 to 20 reps, hey, you know what? I did that a month ago, and I just came off of a heavy week. I feel way stronger than before. I'm going to go heavier, and you should have the right to go heavier and repeat that cycle. But here's the long short of it. Eat a surplus, spread out your protein in 4 meals, and resistance train. Resistance train, you're going to want to be borderline overtraining, but don't overtrain. If you can't do it, if you can't perform well on your workout, then you're overtraining. Get more rest. But that's the little short end of it with my rant. Went a little long there. I'm trying to make this a little bit more efficient. I talk too much. Fasted workouts, yay or nay? So I got a couple studies here, and really, this is a very argumentative thing here, but the best answer is like, what do you prefer? Because in one study I looked at, it doesn't appear to affect exercise performance less than 60 minutes. So if you're going for anything less than 60 minutes, it doesn't appear to affect it. And if you go longer than that, you're actually going to then reduce the amount of muscle glycogen. So that would be muscle stores of sugar. If I'm having a strength training burst, I'm going to like work out in the morning. I'm going to be using stored muscle sugar because that's ideal range for me to be doing my training. And I have all the sugar that I need already because I would have had some carbs the day before. Even if I didn't have a lot of carbs, I would still be all right. And then If I went longer than that, then that might be an argument. Let's say you're running. You're definitely, and this study actually was talking about if you're doing an aerobic kind of higher intensity kind of thing that would require, like, let's say you're going for a run, let's say you're doing a bike ride and you're trying to perform well. It didn't even affect it in less than 60 minutes. And that was, in a controlled environment. In this first study, there was a theoretical basis for more fat oxidation, but in the second study, the evidence was not strong enough. So my answer is, what do you prefer? I'll give you a couple different examples because, for me, I like getting my morning walks in. If I have cardio or strength, I always like to work out before I eat because I prefer windowed eating. I eat it in the afternoons because then I have bigger meals and I don't think about food much during the day. It doesn't affect my performance, so that's not an issue. So for me, it works. I remember talking to an individual who was a boxer, and he had said, "Yeah, I just didn't like the morning workouts because I didn't like not eating before." Hey, that's an answer. Like, that's his answer. Even if it's anecdotal, even if the research says, "Oh, you'd actually perform fine," he doesn't feel like he will work well, then he doesn't do it. It makes sense, right? The one thing I will say as a little tip, though, if you do want to try these and you aren't used to fasted workouts, I do recommend EAAs, or essential amino acids, or branching amino acids during the workout, as those can actually kind of really prevent that feeling of not being full or anything like that. Drinking those right before or during can actually kind of put off that feeling of feeling like fasted and lethargic, because remember, it's more cognitive. If you eat something within an hour or two before the workout, it's not going to the muscle glycogen, it's going to your blood tissue, or blood sugar, and then that's going to affect your cognitive. So it can affect you cognitively, but again, the study didn't say that it actually really does that much. But if you're going longer than 60 minutes, it's a different conversation. So what do you prefer? What's the goals? And if it works for you, do it. So what got me interested in fitness and nutrition? So this is a good one. I have a little blog on my website, NEM Forum there. So I recommend you check it out because there's a little bit more of a background story to it. But I'll give you, a little bit of the gist of it. I was a little chubby kid. I remember being in grade 9, and I was like 5 feet tall, soft around the edges. I said I had boobies and I wanted pecs. And so I got in. I wanted to be big and strong since I was a kid. Always had a bit of a hero thing in my mindset. I always wanted to be a big, strong guy that could fight. And so I got into strength training, and I remember one of the best presents I ever got was a bench press for Christmas. So I did a bunch of bench, and I got strong, not necessarily balanced, so that led to shoulder issues. But I remember seeing a friend of mine, and he could barely do what I could do many times for a workout, like once or twice. So I'm like, but he could beat me up. So I got to know more. So I got into boxing. And then that became an obsession because you get into the whole culture of boxing, and then you understand the mindset of basically personal responsibility of trying to will yourself to be better. I initially wanted to be like a construction worker, or sorry, a carpenter. Didn't like the environment as much. I remember working with my friend one day, and we were initially just training together, and then I wanted to train in the morning, faster workout, and then just train him at night. And I was just enjoying that perspective of helping him, guiding him, showing him what I know. And it was huge. And I was just like, if I get paid for this, this is what I'm meant to do. And so that's where I stepped into my zone, and that's where I found my calling, because I was a C student, and I was someone who didn't really care about a lot of this stuff. And all of a sudden it turned into a passion, and it completely changed my character. So there's a little bit more of that's the rough of it. And there's a bit more on my website if you want to read my blog on there. Okay, this one is a good question. Lower back hip injury. How can I maintain everything without hurting myself again? So I'm going to say right off the bat, see a professional. I can't assess you. I'm going to tell you it probably is probability based on asymmetries that I've dealt with. But you're going to need to see someone, because you can't do an assessment with a lower back hip injury. Like, that's, I heard this by Stuart McGill and I loved it. People are way too non-specific with back issues. Like, hey, I have a leg issue. I have leg pain. What should I do about it? Right? It's like, there's a lot of issues that could be going on in your low back, right? I don't know if you fell, I don't know if you got hurt, but I know this individual is boxing and going hard, and he's younger and he's training really hard and he's always going hard. So I can assume some of these things, but I'm not going to be able to help you without it. And I'm going to also give you some advice. And anyone who has injuries should listen to this advice. So the biomechanics in the sport, in all sports, have asymmetrical issues. Okay, so that means, if I'm a goalie, and I was a goalie, so I had my left hand high and my right hand low, and I would be always kind of positioned. And a lot of people like to shoot gloves, so you go to that side a lot. Then I was boxing, left hand high, right hand low by the chin, and then you're offset in your angle and your position. So that resulted in, even a high left rib cage and a tight left hip flexor. And you can even test this on yourself. Take a step back with your left leg and then do it with your right leg and see which hip flexor, which would be the front of your hip. And I'm going to show you a little diagram after where it is if you're looking at this. But that QL is into the hip. Like, that's why you're feeling a lot of these issues, and that's possibly what the problem is. And then I'm even still working on this now to this day, because this asymmetry was going on so much. It's caused other issues, and so there's even a lack of internal rotation of that front hip that can happen. So it's not a simple fix. Like I say, I felt a similar issue for a long time, and now I'm just getting on the cusp of understanding it through getting help. So this is the best lesson for this individual, because they're saying, how can I maintain everything I gain without hurting myself again? Getting help. Like, you're going to maintain everything you have, because your conditioning will go up and down no matter what, and it should throughout a season, because you'll be recovering, and then you can get your conditioning back. And your skill is what you want to develop, and you can't develop a skill if you're injured, right? And I know this individual is young, but everyone should remember this. Healthy equals practice. Okay. If you're not healthy, unhealthy means you can't train. Like, you can't practice anything. You can't get better at anything. You can't move forward. So healthy also equals proper joints, right? Especially risky joints. So like shoulders, hips, these things that are really important. So therefore, if you don't have proper joint health, you can't practice. Like, you shouldn't practice. So, injury prevention or treatment isn't a choice, it's a priority. It should always come first. It's a part of the training, it's a part of the equation. Don't consider it as I could, because I've done that. And, I got all kinds of issues in my shoulders because I've walked through it. If you can take the responsibility, think of it like this. Right now, and this speaks to everyone, I know, because 90% of people out there have had some issue or have a nagging issue here or there. What do we do when we train? We walk into discomfort. We practice something we're not good at, right? What do we do when we're saying this person's disciplined? They walk into all these things. And this individual is trying to do boxing. You're going to walk into, I push hard. I'm willing to do whatever it takes, whatever it takes. What about dialing it down and being healthy? Well, I don't want to do that. Why not? Like, why are you not willing to do this? Because it's boring, because it's not getting you more jacked, it's not making you more strong. Actually, we'll do all of those things. It just doesn't feel like it until you give it time. You got to balance your body out. Your body will always deal with asymmetries, and we want to make those asymmetries the least likely to cause problems in the sport. And if you want to maintain what you have gained, whatever you gained, you're going to want to be healthy. And also remember, anytime you take a step back from something, I always say it's not backing down, it's attacking from a different direction. And you can always work on other things. There's a hip issue. Doesn't mean you can't work on other things. I remember when I had my shoulder issue. Okay, well, the first time I ever did it, I just did a ton of cardio. I did a ton of core, got better hip shoulder stability, and I actually treated it right. One of the other times when I had my other shoulder had issues, because all the poor things that I had done leading up to it, I at least took the responsibility, and then I ran a marathon. And then last year, when I was recovering from the surgery, I ran a half marathon. I did the best half time I'd ever done. There's always something we can do. There's always something you can move forward in. So don't think you can't continue to gain. Just change your focus, and especially make this a priority. And everyone should look at joint health is a priority. Okay, here's the hip flexor for those who are looking at it. This is if anyone has low back issues. I'm not saying all low back issues, but start with just like doing a couch stretch, and you can look that up on YouTube. I usually have it also on my page. You'll probably see it on my leg workout day, or even whenever I do a deadlift. I'll do it before I do my deadlifts all the time. Loosen the hip flexor for hip extensors, right? So the hip flexor goes in the front of the leg here. It goes through your hips into the back of your low back, and that's why the QL gets tight, because there's this pulling on it all the time. And so if you can actually help loosen those hip flexors a lot, it can really reduce a lot of that hip issue. But it doesn't cure it, okay? Does not cure it. So start there, get some help. I can't get into my heart rate max. Am I pushing hard enough, or should I change my workout? Change the equation, man. I know this individual. He's a hard worker. So I'll show you a few different equations here. For those who can see it, 220 minus your age is the most common one. But, some people just crap on this so bad. And I don't think it's like the absolute worst. I think, like, for me, it works. But some people it doesn't. There's another one here I give, 207 minus your age times 0.7 is for people over the age of 40. And then there's a 211 minus your age times 0.64 for those generally active. There was another heart rate reserve one, and I couldn't find it. But here's the thing: is I'm just like, find your heart rate max. And the reason why I say this, so the 220 minus your age works for me. And then I had an individual work with me who was in the best shape. Like, this guy came to me just for boxing conditioning. He fought at nationals. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to brag about this. I'm saying that we just did good work together because he did really hard training and he was willing to do it. And he said at the national level, when he fought the former national champ, the guy who he got beat, but he was fighting at nationals, top boxing in his division. And he said conditioning was absolutely no issue. It was more of just a strategy thing. And he said he wasn't tired at all. And for that level, that intense, the stakes and everything, and he didn't feel like conditioning was a problem, that makes me feel good that we did a good work. And I knew I was pushing him. Now, here's why I'm pointing this out. When I did my workout, we did the same workouts. I'm checking my heart rate max. I'm around 190, 194, and that made sense for my age at the time. He was around 173. Couldn't get him higher. Maybe 174. And he was 20. And so clearly that was his heart rate max because we pushed him to it. So my whole thing is, does it feel like max effort? You might have hit it, right? And just the best way to do is find a test. So you can do a beep test, push as hard as you can. This is a good incline one. So an incline treadmill running test, and this is how I remember us seeing us figure out a VO2 max. So you start at 1%, choose like a normal jog speed, anywhere from 6 to 8 miles per hour, but like something that you could sustain technically for 20 minutes. You're not going to go for 20 minutes, but something you could sustain for a while. And then increase 1% every 2 minutes. And then go until you basically want to fall off. Now, the main thing here is, you don't change your speed. You stay, let's say you choose 6, you stay at 6. You choose 7, you stay at 7. And then you go increase your incline, your grade, so it goes 1%. 2 minutes later, 2%. 3 minutes, another 2 minutes later, you're going to go 3%. And then another 2 minutes, 4%. And then maybe you get up to 6 or 7%. Now, not only is this a great test for you to see how far you can go and how long you can go for aerobic, but you're going to get to a heart rate max, right? And the way you know for sure is I always tell people, go beyond the level. So let's say you finish that 2 minute mark and you're at like, okay, 5, we're supposed to increase it. And you just want to mentally get there and you get off. To me, that might be submaximal. It's not like it's not safe. Like, do this safely and don't fall off a treadmill. But I will just argue the one thing that if you made it there, maybe you could have pushed another 10, 20 seconds. But here's where the real magic is if you have a good heart rate monitor, because you're going to want to put it on your the one that's a strap, works most effectively. Like, you can try a Fitbit. I always find my Fitbit doesn't really work well. You can try any, like the Apple Watches. I just find the ones on the wrist aren't very conclusive. But check it out and see if it kind of plateaus, like it just can't go any higher. Any drill that you do where your heart rate can no longer go any higher and it seems like you're at max intensity, take it as a heart rate max. Like, that just might be your genetic heart rate max. I know this individual pushes hard. So another really good one, not really, this is anecdotal. This is just a really good conditioning drill, and how hard you push into it is important. But generally I see people push really hard in this. Burpees on Tabata. My old boxing coach gave me this. So it's 8 sets of 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. Do as many burpees as you can within the 20 seconds. You take a 10-second rest, and you're trying to see how many burpees you can maintain. Now, the high level, he had always said elite athletes should be 8 or more. And that was always my test for myself, just to know if I was in good anaerobic, kind of high intensity conditioning. And I certainly feel like at the end of that, I always hit near a heart rate max. So again, just come back to, do you feel like you're pushing your absolute hardest? Find some sort of a test that you can push your hardest. The beep test is a good one if you feel like you push it, again, not to the level, but to where you actually can't do it anymore. If you're doing the treadmill test, do it safely. That's my answer. It's a little longer. Okay, this is another tougher one. I'm going to try to do it quick, but here's the thing. Are protein bars like Quest or Cliff healthy? Healthy is a spectrum, okay? And there's going to be argumentative things as to whether things are unhealthy or detrimental. Really it depends on how much we have something sometimes to make it really unhealthy. But sometimes it's not necessarily healthy itself. It might just be net zero, and then it might be beneficial, right? So I look at health in terms of hot versus cold, right? Cold isn't really an entity. It's lack of heat. So how good something is for you is the question. And Clifton Quest bars are very different. So Quest bar is going to be more protein and sweeteners and sugar alcohols. Cliff bar is going to be more, have more carbs, lower protein versus energy in there. But there's benefits and there might be possible cons to both of them. So the Quest bars have sweetener sugar alcohols in them, like sorbitol, mannitol, and I looked at the research on how it shifts the gut microbiome. More research is needed for long-term concerns, and you can see that a lot in both of these things. So the one thing that is known is that it will cause bloating or GI issues. So if you have IBS or IBD, it can aggravate it. So I would stay clear of that if you have bowel issues. I even just, for me, like this is where I look at it, is like I'm someone who wants to have protein. I usually try to control my energy. So Quest bars actually makes sense to me. Like I don't want to have a lot of energy, an excessive amount of energy. I want to control it. And I like something on the go sometimes, or when I'm at the lake and I just want to bring some extra protein snacks. Quest bars actually fit that protocol, but I got to be careful how much I have, because if I have more than two, oh my goodness, I feel bloated, feel disrupted. And it's not even, it's sometimes it's that day, sometimes it's the next day, and I'm going to get gassy. Like no one wants to be around me. So really caution, because when your gut microbiome goes to consume those sugar alcohols, there ends up being like your intestinal bacteria is going to break it down, and then that's what causes that gas-like reaction, and you're going to repopulate it basically. And so that's why we just know so little about the gut microbiome. Here's what I'm going to say is, it doesn't replace good clean food. I actually do like it for an occasional treat or on the go. I think it's better than nothing. I definitely do. But I'm not going to have it replace good quality food. Cliff bars. Soy would be the one concern I have in there. And, I looked into some of the research, so I was kind of surprised to find that some research declares no link to cancer. Some will point out, and this is a little typo here, it should be organic or GMO, non-organic or GMO, non-GMO soybeans has better health outcomes. So how they make the soybeans could actually affect it as well. Now, again, surprising research. Some, this is the one link that I remember learning a long time ago, and a lot of people will talk about, is phytoestrogens. So there's links to ovarian cancers. And so it can mimic sex hormones. And because of that, I stay clear of them. But there's people who like plant-based protein, so I don't think it's the worst. Now, I think there's even better plant-based protein. I think having something like pea protein might even be a little bit better. But at the same time, it's how often, and are we trying to replace regular food with these things? And the fact that Cliff bars have more sugar. I'm not saying sugar is bad. Remember, I believe how beneficial. So if I'm going to have a Cliff bar, what would be appropriate is maybe doing an activity. Maybe I'm hiking, maybe I'm backpacking and I need energy. And, if you're someone who, like that's what Cliff bars came from. It came from people who were actually, I'm pretty sure they were mountain climbers, and they were hikers or something of that sort, and they wanted energy. And they only need a little bit of protein for that activity, so it makes sense. So take that information how you will. I'm like, I personally like Quest, controlling my calories and then having that protein intake, but not so much that I get any intestinal issues. And then as far as the Cliff Bars, I personally try to stay clear of the soy. But if you're okay with the risk of the phytoestrogens, you can look into. I can send you the research on it, and it's really depends on what you want to bet on, really, right? It's these are links. They're not correlation is not causation, because if we go to correlation, then people would say, oh, you shouldn't eat red meat. So I might be wrong about phytoestrogens, but there's a lot of people who do believe that there's risk with this as well. So it's up in the air as far as I'm concerned. What do you think of hill sprints? Hill sprints are great. You're less ground reaction. So every time you run, it's like a horizontal jump realistically. So pushing that knee up higher too is going to improve your sprint form, because that's actually how you want to really sprint. And so you hit the ground sooner. You push up, you hit the ground sooner. So gravity doesn't actually force you to the ground. Especially try to use a grassy area and less DOM, so it'll be a little easier on the joints. Now, make sure you do a steady descent. It's even kind of good to face it and kind of walk backwards down, because then you can work on controlling that eccentric, strengthening your legs. Make sure when you do a good hip protocol, high intensity intervals should be, taking 2 to 3 minute rests within some of these intervals of 8 to 20 seconds of work. You shouldn't be trying to, in my view, because I want to perform it very explosively. Good hit should be explosive work at a high capacity. Because if you go past that 20 seconds, you're going to get more glycolytic. You're going to work into you might have worse form. You might change your form. And then you're going to get into injury risks and breaking down your body too much. We want to minimize the amount of breakdown. We want to do the most amount of stimulation in the power energy system, and taking these big breaks. And I know so many people who like to go 30 on, 30 off. That won't actually allow you to work high intensity. So, it's your workout, but if you want to really practice that good, and it's going to have a metabolic effect that it'll help you burn a lot of calories if you're able to really push into that hard sprint, taking a big break and performing well, right? Rather than ruining your mechanics and trying to rush too much of a rest, right? That's my 2 cents on hill sprints. Okay, last one here. Are you eating poultry or fish or just red meat? I love all meats. Let's just get that straight. I do like ruminant meat. I don't necessarily have too much lamb right now, but I am a big fan of anything that is ruminant. And just full disclosure, coming from a carnivore background, I did that for about 5 months. Really loved it. I moved into having more plants. I do enjoy just that variety in my diet. So red meat and eggs are my staple because they're high nutrient density. So initially, when I was writing this up, I was going to show you all the different backgrounds of it. But if anyone wants the nutrients, honestly, just look it up and look at how many nutrients are in red meat and eggs, and they have so many nutrients. And so I didn't even know that until I got involved in the carnivore community, realizing that the bioavailable nutrients and most of what we need is there. So I have chicken and pork as well to change it up. It's like pork's like a good fat source to me, a lot of it. And then chicken is like a nice protein anchor. So I can complement that with like chicken and ribs or chicken and bacon. It's like a nice little mix up instead of always eating red meat all the time. Fish is expensive, but has good healthy fat. So I'm a big fan of salmon. So I just usually invest in the red meat. I do eat veggies with each meal, and I finish my day quite often with a little bit of fruit in my protein shake. So that's the rough of it. And I'll also let you all know that I'm going to be doing a little bit of a rundown on how I'm prepping for the bodybuilding this year. So once I get that all sorted out, I'm going to kind of figure out how I'm still making my plan as I go along. But because of the carnivore experience, it was really cool to realize how I could reduce my body fat and improve my body composition. And it was quite easy. It was really enjoyable. And so far, it's already been enjoyable. I'm, about a month or so into it. So I'll be doing that rundown for you later on in the future. So thank you very much for joining today on the Quality Q&A. I'll be doing another one of these in a month or so. So if you have questions, keep them locked and loaded. And don't be afraid to even just DM me at any point, actually, and I can just add them to the list, and I can routinely do this for you guys. And if you want to challenge any of these questions, by all means, I'm open to discussion. I can send you the papers and I can discuss the ideas around it. If you have any questions or concerns around it, please reach out. DM me, you can email me, anything like that. And yeah, thank you very much for joining. I hope you enjoyed the content today. I shot this a while ago, and I wanted to make it more of just a verbal thing so people could listen to it. And I also want to make it shorter because some of them are a little bit too long. So hopefully this is effective enough to answer some of those questions, give you some good quality answers. And remember to subscribe this podcast, but please share it. I think that's a really important thing for me, is if you can share this podcast to people who you know might benefit from it, that's what's going to help, because I want to get in touch with more people. I want to reach out and help more people. So if you know someone who doesn't know how to balance their protein, or someone who's trying to gain size or control their calories, why don't you send it to them so I can help out, and they can also reach out, and I can help answer their questions as well. So thank you again for joining. I really appreciate it. And remember, it's not about the pursuit of happiness, but it's about the happiness within pursuit. Thanks for joining.